Next, we'll jump into how we can actually build our data warehouse and the cube to be used for analysis. To build our data warehouse, we'll be using the same tools that we use for developing traditional relational databases. So I'll jump to my SQL Server Management Studio, where I've already prepared two databases, one to be used as a transactional database and the second as a data warehouse. I've downloaded the AdventureWorks sample, which you can find online from Microsoft website, which has a lot of examples that will benefit you learn how to implement BI in practice. So let's look at AdventureWorks transactional database. We can go, for example, to the sales data that are inside AdventureWorks. And you can see here that, for example, the sales order, we have a table for sales order header, another table for sales order details, and probably the product will be in a different table as well. And they are linked in a normalized manner, as we discussed before. But when we jump to our data warehouse, we can see two types of tables here. First is the fact table, which, like we said, will be storing the amounts, the quantifiable data here, amounts, cost, quantities, and our dimensions, which will store other data that tell a story about our fact table. So if we take, for example, the reseller sales fact table, we can see here, let me zoom this a little bit. We can see here the fact table will contain keys to our dimensions, which are foreign keys, to our dimension primary keys, as well as other quantifiable data such as the quantity, the unit price, the extended amount, the discount amount, and so on. If we have a look at this model, you can see here it's a snowflake model where the fact table will be connected directly to dimension tables, but the dimension table can have different levels as well. For example, the product will have the product subcategory and the product category normalized in the dimension itself. Why is this important for me? If I want to know how many products I have in a specific subcategory or in a specific category, I can do that with this model, but it will be difficult to be done with the star model. So it depends on your requirements to specify which model to use. Let's have a look at another facts table, which is the finance data. So one is for sales data, the other one is for finance data. For finance, it's a star model. The fact table will contain the amounts, and the dimension tables will contain the account, which account is this amount related to, which department, which organization, if we have multiple organizations, and the scenario, is it actual, is it budget, is it forecasted, and most importantly, the date dimension. The date dimension usually you'll see in all the data warehouses, because like we said, data warehouse is time variant, so it's important to have the date dimension with each fact table. If we take a deeper look inside the date dimension, what you'll see is that we'll have a date key. Usually it's an integer representing year, month, and day, alternate keys. And then we'll have a breakdown. We will specify all data that is available for this date. For example, if we take 2015-01-01, we'll store the day number of the week, the English day name of the week, Saturday, Sunday, and so on. We'll store also the day number of the month, the day number of the year, the week number of the year, the month name, the year, the calendar year, and we can have also the fiscal year, the quarter, and the semester as well. So we'll try to store as much information as possible about our date dimension, which will be beneficial later on when we do our analysis. We can directly drill down from the year to the semester, to the quarter, to the month, to the day, and so on. We can also have the time if it's required. How to create the facts and dimension tables is just like how you create the normal relational tables. You'll just say a new table, you put your columns, you put your foreign keys and primary keys, and save it as a fact or as a dimension, and then you will link them together through relationships to link the fact table to the dimension table. Now, after we build this data warehouse, and as you can see here, I have multiple fact tables, each fact table representing one area of my business. I have finance, I have call center data, I have sales data, and so on. Each one of them is a separate data mart that we will be linked sometimes together through dimension tables. For example, the date dimension will apply to finance data, will apply to the sales data, as well as the call center data, and we will use the same dimension. We will not create a different dimension table for each of our fact tables. We can use the same dimension, which will help us also later on when we want to analyze this data. So I'll jump now to Visual Studio 2012, where I installed my Microsoft BI tools to actually create the cube. After we create the tables structure, of course, we'll go through ETL process to bring the data into these tables. For ETL, like I said, you can use SQL Server Integration Services. You can develop your own custom tools to bring and normalize all these data. And also you can use the stored procedures to bring the data from one database to another. So you have different methods to bring the data into your data warehouse. After we bring the data, we'll start developing the cube and testing on it. So to develop the cube, like I said, I'll go to Microsoft Visual Studio 2012. I say new project. Inside the templates, I'll have business intelligence, and under it, I have analysis services, integration services, if I want to do ETL, and reporting services after we build our cube. So I'll choose analysis services, and I'll select the first one, analysis services, multidimensional and data mining project. I'll call my project BI Cube, for example. Now, once I have my solution ready, I'll start as it appears here in this order. I'll start by defining my data source, where my data resides. So I'll say, again, I'll say right-click, new data source. Then next, I will create the data source. If I have it already, I can select it from here. If I don't have it, I'll just say new. From new, I specify the server name. Where is my SQL server? The authentication, Windows or SQL authentication. And then I'll specify my data warehouse database under database connection. I'll click test connection to make sure everything is fine. If it succeeded, I can just click on OK. Select the data connection that I just created and go to next. Next, will ask me for impersonation information. Usually we use the service account for impersonation. So you'll just select use the service account and click next. You should call your data source something meaningful for you. So for example, we can call it AdventureWorks DS, data source, and click on finish. Now we have prepared our data connection to our data warehouse. Next, we'll have to create a data source view. A data source view, we'll just right-click, new data source view. It will ask you to select a data source. We'll select the data source that we just created. We'll go to next. It will ask you to select the tables that you want to include in your data source view. Here, I don't want to have all the fact tables. For example, I want to build for finance, for reseller sales, and for, let's see, okay, we can choose the call center. So 3 different areas, 3 different subjects. I'll include the fact tables. When I ask it to add related tables, it will automatically know what dimensions are related to these tables, so it will add them for me. So I have my fact tables, I have my dimension tables that I'll be using. I'll just click on next. It will just ask me to name this data source view. I can call it DSV, for example, and click on finish. As you can see here, it created the data source view for me. Now, the important thing about creating this data source view is that you can add calculated columns to the dimension tables or the fact tables without affecting your data source. So let's take, for example, the date dimension. What I can do with the date dimension, I can, for example, like you said, you've seen before, the date dimension will have the month name without the year. So if I want, for example, a field that will combine both the month and the year together, so what I'll say, I'll just ask for new right click, a new named calculation. So I'll call it, for example, month name or month year. And in the expression, I've already prepared my expression here. What you'll see, I can take the English month name plus the calendar year, convert it into character. And this calculated value will be stored in our data source view and can be used later on in our cube as well. Similarly, for example, if we take the employee table, you can see something very common with tables that store employee or person information. You have the first name, last name, and middle name all in separate fields. So what you can do, you can combine them all in one field and call it full name, for example. So again, right click, new named calculation. I'll call it full name. And in the expression, I can write whatever SQL statement I want. So I'll just combine the first and last name if the middle name is not available, or all the 3 together if it's available. Click on OK. So now I have a new calculated column added to my employees table without affecting the source tables that I have. I can do the same for all the dimension tables I have, but this will do for now. After I prepared my data source view, I'll go on and create my cube, the multi-dimensional model. So right click on cube, new cube. I'll click next. Use existing tables that we've already prepared in our data source view. Next. It will ask me to select the measure group tables, which are our fact tables. If you don't know them, you can just ask it to suggest the tables for you. Sometimes the suggestion will add tables that you don't need in your fact tables or measure group tables, so you can just remove it. I have my call center, finance, and reseller sales measure group table selected. Next, it will show me all the measures that are available. Then it will show me the dimensions that are related to the fact tables that I selected. So you can call this cube anything. So I'll just call it BI cube and click on finish. What you'll notice now, it created the cube for me and it created the dimensions as well. Now for the dimensions part, I need to do some work before I can just deploy this cube and use it for analysis, which we call hierarchies. So if I take, for example, the date dimension, it will show me the data source view of this dimension. So I'll select whatever fields that I will need to analyze later on. So I can select, for example, the day name of week, the day number of month, the English month name. And here you can select whatever you require or the business requires for the analysis. We can select the calendar quarter, the calendar year, the calendar semester, and you'll have also the calculated value that you created. So after we select what kind of attributes we need to analyze, we'll have to create hierarchies. And to create hierarchies, usually we think about how we want to drill down with our data using this dimension. So to drill down through the date dimension, we usually start with the year, the biggest available. So I'll just drag it into hierarchies view. So I have the calendar year. After the calendar year, I'll just select the semester, which half of the year. Then I'll select the quarter. After the quarter, I'll have the, for example, the month name. Let me just select. I can have month number of year, or I can even use the month year that I've created. And finally, I will have the day number of month as last in my hierarchy. So my drill down later on, when I want to analyze this data, I'll see the data year to year, then I can drill down to the semester, the quarter, the month, and the day number of month. And if I have the hour, I can also add it in my hierarchy. So similarly, we'll have other dimensions as well that we can create hierarchies for. So for example, if I take the reseller dimension, I can add, for example, the business type in my attributes. I can add the reseller name and the year opened. And in my hierarchy, I can have business type as the first level in my hierarchy and reseller name as the next level. So I can group my data according to business type and then drill down to the reseller name. If I take, for example, the sales territory, also I can select the country, the region, and the group, and then create a hierarchy out of them. So it will be group, then country, then region. For all the dimensions, I can do the same thing. If I don't want hierarchies, if I don't need hierarchies for my analysis, it's fine, but usually at least the date dimension should contain these hierarchies. Now, I'll just create the attributes of other dimensions without creating the hierarchies. So for example, I can select these two in the scenario. This for the finance data. I can select the scenario name. I want to see the scenario name when I do my analysis. Is it actual? Is it budget? In the organization, I can have the organization name. Okay, so we'll go through our dimension tables. Like we said, we can go to our account dimension, add, for example, the account description. This is again for the finance data. Account type if we need it. And we'll jump, for example, to our product table. Here, as you remember, when we saw this diagram, the product was linked to the product subcategory and the product category as well. So we might need to see them here, see the relationship between them. So we'll just say show tables. If we don't already have it here, we'll have to add it to our data source view. So you see product category and product subcategory. We need to add them to our data source view. Click on OK. save it. When we go back to the product, right-click and show tables, we can see the product category and product subcategory here. We'll click on OK. They will both appear. And you can see also the relationship between these tables. So now to create our attributes, we'll need to see the English product name, for example. We'll need to see the English product category name, and the English product subcategory name. Out of these, we'll create our hierarchy. We can have it as category, then the subcategory, then the product name.